Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Reimagine Creative Operations, Where to Start with AI. I'm Megan Billingsley, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. First, the slides will advance automatically. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button in the top right corner of your presentation window. If you have questions for our speakers, please enter them in the Q&A box. Our speakers will try to answer all questions at the end of today's discussion, but any remaining questions will be answered via email. And lastly, you'll receive the webinar recording via email, so you can watch or share it on demand. Today, we're exploring how AI is rapidly reshaping how organizations operate and ways you can use it to build the right foundation for creative operations. And with that, let's meet our speakers. Joining us today are Stef Born, Senior Director of AI Solutions at Vertesia, and Gary Gaffney, EVP, Technology and Systems at MadEngine. I'd like to ask each of our speakers to provide a quick introduction of themselves and how they work. So, Stef, let's start with you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me today. So yeah, my name is Stefan. I work for Vertesia. I'm in my role there. I'm really helping organizations to sort of visioneer where they want to take their AI, make them understand how to use AI as a strategic instrument rather than just like a point solution. And my background originally in advertising really helps with understanding that and bringing all of that knowledge of a creative process and creative workflow into an AI-driven new future.
Excellent. Thank you. And Gary.
Thank you, Megan. My name is Gary Gaffney. I'm the EVP of Technology and Systems at MadEngine, and my primary role is to oversee our entire technology stack at MadEngine. So I oversee all of our network security and our application stack, and very integral with our AI processes that we've been working on over the past year and a half.
Excellent. Thank you both for taking the time to be with us today. So let's start today's discussion by setting the context. We're going to be talking about AI a lot, and it would be helpful to give our audience some basic descriptions of what we mean by generative and agentic AI. So, Stef, can you please explain?
Yes, of course. This is like two buzzwords everyone is seeing these days, and what's really the difference? So it all began with generative AI, which you can think of a content creator, right? There's various models out there that everyone has almost freely at their disposal. Some of them are really around creating new text content or refining text content, and then more advanced imaging models or video models or audio models allowing you to generate new content or take existing content and modify that. And up to now also with the fidelity that increases every single day, it's getting better. So that's really the generative part in all of that. When we now talk about agentic AI, it is more of an agent that allows you to work with it. It has the capability to reason, to plan, to think, and to execute a multi-step task, breaking down complex problems into simpler individual tasks that then the agent will be working on. And in order to do that, the agent will have a number of tools at its disposal. So it is not just a normal forth and back conversational chat conversation that you're having, but it is really more of a partner that helps you with problem solving.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And AI is certainly everywhere these days. Yet across the marketing landscape, we're hearing from many leaders that they're still trying to figure out how to unlock its value for their operations. So, Gary, from your perspective, why is AI adoption presenting a struggle for teams?
I think where AI has really been a struggle for teams is just it's so new and it's happened so rapidly. So like when the internet came into existence, it took, I think, 5 to 7 years to have 1 million users. With ChatGPT, when it was introduced, it took 5 days. And so there's this big interest in it, but there's so many unknowns still. How do I use AI strategically within my organization? How do I do it responsibly? How do I protect my IP? How do I maintain control? And across an organization, those are big questions that are not necessarily easy to answer, and everything is so new. We really struggle to navigate that and come to a clear idea of what's the best path.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Stef, you must see the challenges that Gary's mentioned prevalent among your marketing and creative clients. Could you please share some of your observations and experiences?
Yeah, I mean, navigating this landscape is really, it's like, I like to compare it to a field of mushrooms. sandbox. Every day there's a new set of mushrooms popping up from the ground, a new solution with a new model offering you a new point solution to something. And it's just so hard to navigate that. It's just the sheer volume is overwhelming to many people, just as Gary says, right? So, and also it leads to this sort of decision paralysis, right? Which one is the best for me? Because now you find yourself in a team, in a corporation, where so many people bring in their own ideas, want to bring something to the table, finding out new tools. Everybody has their news feeds. And everyone's experimenting. It seems like we're all back to the sandbox. Everyone's playing these days with new things, and everybody thinks this can be a valuable tool to add to my process, which is on the one hand side a really good thing, a really good development, but on the other hand, it makes it also really, really hard to navigate that. And then the second part really is how do you integrate and how do you refine all of these things and integrate them into your legacy systems, into your ecosystem, right? You come on topics like data flow, like data governance, like you need to constantly refine this AI to meet your specific business requirements. It's not like in the good old days where you buy a software and every 2 months you get an update and great, you have a new button and a new function. With AI, you are developing and bringing it forward every single day. And every single day something is changing, which gives you amazing capabilities, but also a huge responsibility in making sure that you streamline your process properly in order to achieve that value that you're hoping for.
Hey, Megan, I would like to add to that too, is I think the number of models, tools like Stef was referring to. I have employees that constantly are saying, hey, there's this new tool X that does this. Can I use it? And I like that the employees are excited about it, but the breadth of tools out there and the amount of marketing out there is almost overwhelming. Like Stef said, what tool should I use and why? And I think that's a big impediment to being successful, is knowing what tool to pick, because there's so many right now.
Yeah, and it's also coming back to where's the value in that, right? Because so far, as I said, everyone's doing point solutions, but you want to have a strategic integration, right? And that is one of the big hurdles, because you go in with these big expectations, and you might be betting everything on the big players, right? On the big integrators, the big model foundational providers. But in the end, they are not the ones who will drive your business reinvention, right? You have to do that. This is your core business, your very own process and workflows that you are now trying to hopefully not just lift and shift, but really find a new way to get new value out of these and rethink the whole way that historically grown processes can be adjusted. There's also this gap of over-administration, right? So I've seen many bigger corporations really creating this governance framework in first place, which is really important. You must have that, right? Indemnification is a huge point, especially in marketing, advertising, where I come from. But also it leads to a sort of a situation where you're locking yourself into not being able to move fast enough at the pace that the people get from all the media out there. They want to move this fast, but you cannot allow it in order to protect your business. So it's a very fine balancing act that you need to find the right balance for in order to make it right.
Yeah, I think that those are great insights. And I would like to shift into kind of demystifying AI, because there are still many unknowns around AI and how it can deliver measurable returns for an organization. So, Stef, how do you demystify AI and help marketing leaders navigate uncertainty?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, there's so much buzz out there, right? It's crazy. Everyone's communicating that you're going to be left behind if you're not up to speed, and there will be only two kinds of people, the ones that do AI and the other ones that don't, and everyone's going to lose their job, and all of that stuff that is not really helping to have you focus on what this new era of tools can do for you. So demystification really means, first of all, bridging the gap between personal and business AI. We all do GPT, we all do Gemini, right? GPT and Gemini allowing everyone in the organization to have a conversational sort of tool that allows them to work with that. When you're moving that over into a business scenario, you need to start understanding more about the mechanics of that. And this is something that we do at Vertesia. We're breaking down all of these buzzwords. We're taking down all of these technicalities of things and explain it the way that it really is. In the end, it's just a prediction. It's a prediction of words. That's what it's really doing. And it's important to understand when you look at a specific use case that you understand how you can use the strength, but also see the weaknesses of such a model. And demystification really is around taking away the fear that people might have, but also breaking with some of the sort of wonderland expectations, I want to call them, where they believe that now AI is coming in and is going to solve everything for me. That's not true. The real work begins now. When you actually start working with AI, you have to rethink the entire way that you're working.
Excellent. Thank you. And Gary, just to kind of tag on to that, what was your company's approach to demystifying AI?
You know, we really took a step back and looked holistically at, what's going on in the market, what's going on with AI. And we had done some experimenting with some AI solutions, and I called it kind of an ad hoc approach. And as I started to look at that, I recognized that this isn't the right way to do AI. It's very expensive if I handle each use case as a one-off. And so we took a step back and said, well, is there something out there that dynamically can help us do this universally, where we can address opportunities as they come forth with kind of a standard platform? And when we really looked at things, we looked at, well, what's the use case? What's the effort? And then what's the value? And so we kind of set up a quadrant where your typical x-axis is value and your y-axis is effort. And we would plot out our graph and we would find out, well, what are those opportunities that were low effort with high value? And what we realized is that there was ways to bring AI into the equation of our business and see and recognize an immediate ROI. And we knew that even though we wanted to get to say this big concept thing, I'm going to use the letter Z, which is the N, we knew we needed to do A and then B and then C in order to get to Z. And we're working towards Z through a strategic approach where we're sequencing each event to gain where we want to get, but we're gaining an AOI, on each iteration. So we gained an ROI on A, B, and C. And so that's how we really broke it down. And as we looked at solutions, that was one of the advantages of Vertesia, because it was a SaaS, software as a service. So it was a centralized hub or tool that we then could leverage as opportunities came up. So that's kind of how we approached it. And it really helped us kind of have a good vision and to see that ROI immediately, so that we weren't just throwing dollars at stuff with no return.
Yeah, that's really spot on what you're saying there. I mean, you must have a vision. Without a vision, you don't know where you want to go. But it's not that you can achieve that as one big system. It is about the little daily wins, right? That you consistently win on a little daily basis, and you gain momentum as you go. At some point, you realize, oh wow, we've come this far now, and this gives you then the opportunity to look back and say, okay, here's really the value we've created so far. What else can we do? So, and many people might get stopped just by that. Like, where do we even want to take it? You need to start somewhere, and you need to keep going every single day. But really, the most valuable solution will come by rethinking the better picture as you go, and not trying to do it all up front and then wondering why you didn't get there.
And I think the use cases were very important, because I think when you look at AI, you have to really break it down to some pieces too. It's like, do I have input that can drive an AI process to make a decision? If I don't have input, I can't make any decisions with AI. It needs data. So do I have data? And if I have that data, then how do I process it? What's my model? How do I manage that data? And then what's the end result we're targeting? And then I'm a firm believer in human in the loop. I think no matter what your AI solution's doing for you, you still want the purview of a human to do some oversight. As time grows and as your model builds and gets more reliable, you can pull that back a little bit. But it's really about input being pushed through a model and then evaluating your output to ensure you're not getting any hallucinations. And once you do that, you then can really start looking strategically at use cases, or I like to call them opportunities within the business, that really can drive value through the AI working to solve a problem, or automating an existing workflow, or helping a team do more with less. Those are kind of things we started to look at.
And this is closing the loop on agentic AI. This is where you're not designing step by step on a drawing board, a process step by step. And as I said, you lift and shift it over. But you're working with agentic AI and help the platforms such as Vertesia help you do all the heavy lifting of the document pre-preparation, for example, or figuring out which tools are the best ones to use in order to analyze these 500 different documents that you have that you need to come to a consensus about or need to make an assessment on. So it's really the pace at which you can quickly develop something with Vertesia, but then immediately take it into production, which really makes it different in an agentic process rather than a workflow builder, which will be the traditional way of doing things.
Excellent insights, both of you. So now that we have a better understanding of AI, I would like to talk about some of its benefits in creative operations. And Gary, you started to touch on this just a little bit in your last answer. So what benefits have you noticed at Mad Engine?
I think the benefits, if I was just to summarize them briefly, was really improved workflow, where you're streamlining a process that, say, was taking 3 individuals to do various distinct 3 steps. You now can automate those steps. I think secondarily, you can increase the speed in which things process. So something that might have taken a week, you can reduce it down to 1 week. The other thing I've noticed in certain processes, specifically to our organization as it relates to asset management, not only did we speed up the ingestion process, but we were able to increase the data that we tagged on that asset that drove additional processes downstream to improve any number of processes, be it sales analysis, being able to manipulate assets in a way to generate new art. So there's just various things within each corporation. If you look at processes that are very, say, very individualistic, where one person is having to do something and it's taking 3 days, AI can really maybe reduce that down to minutes because it can process data so rapidly. So those were the areas that we really saw benefits, was just really improving workflows, getting things done faster, and getting more done with less, which I think sometimes is very important to an organization.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that's a great example of how AI benefits your company. Stef, what benefits are you seeing specific to marketing and creative workflows?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to break a lance for the people, because it's the reduction that we see is not necessarily in having less people, right? It is in the same amount of people, but now they can do 10 times more, because with AI, we're able to remove friction points, mundane tasks that have been blocking teams just in the administrative overhead. Think of the following scenario. So you have an advertising campaign, you want to bring it out to 15 different countries, right? You probably have like a master campaign brief, whatever. But now you cannot just take that and translate it literally into other languages. It won't fly. There's so many nuances, differences in the cultural expectations, in the visual elements, in the way that the product is perceived, your brand is perceived, in the way that people speak, in the way that humor works, right? In the way that people are said. There's so many nuances, emotional nuances, how perception works. And we talk in this case, when you talk about such a localization, it's a transcreation you need to do. And that's a tremendous effort that you have to go through when you are still at the early stages of conceiving a new campaign, a new communication, right? So just to do that would take you, or currently it takes you, a horde of people in coordination and administrative overhead and friction to coordinate with many different countries, because you need the experts from the different cultures to come back and evaluate and assess these concepts that you have. So what you can do with Vertesia, and not naming any clients that we're working for, but what we're doing for some of these clients is to actually reverse engineer these creative briefs and then run them through a synthetic testing in order to get a precise report that's based on real insights, that lets you understand within 50 minutes versus 3 weeks, where you will be landing with your creative concept and with your strategic positioning for that particular marketing campaign. And this is not to replace people again. This is just giving you the ability to quickly iterate and to quickly keep yourself from maybe making mistakes that take weeks and weeks, because the number one thing in marketing is your time to market, right? So the quicker you are informed, the better and more informed you can create and create in the right direction.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that these are all very exciting benefits. But first, before we can even get to those, organizations need to implement AI. So Gary, what advice do you have for businesses as they transition from AI exploration to implementation?
I learned something that I think is very important for companies to realize. And if you think of AI, think of it in basically 4 phases. So phase 0 means you do nothing. It's probably not a good thing to do at this point. Phase 1 is really like I think Stef alluded to this earlier. Users are using AI just in everyday life, but phase 1 really is using AI as basic tools. You know, whether you're using a core product like ChatGPT or Copilot within your Microsoft ecosystem, you essentially are using it to summarize meetings, maybe write an executive summary on a long, prepared document, doing basic searches of emails. So that's phase 1. And users are starting to do that, but it's an important step because users have to get comfortable with AI. And phase 1 is a great way to get involved with AI. Phase 2 is where you start getting into some of that agentic AI, where you start to build agents, but they're still triggered by a human, which means there's a task you've automated through AI, but the user still is the instigator that says, go do the work. And that's really kind of good because there's a little bit of hand holding and there's a level of control that enables the business to get comfortable with how AI is being utilized. And then phase 3 is where it's a true agentic AI solution where it's a workflow that happens automatically. It's basically hands off. You may incorporate human in the loop on the back end, but for the most part, the agent knows something needs to be done. It kicks in and does the work and boom, you're done. We're using actually phase 3 for our asset ingestion because once an artist develops art and saves it, boom, it's literally into our asset management system and it's been tagged and bagged and ready for use downstream extremely quickly. But that's really the navigation we looked at is to how do we build into it sequentially? And you don't want to try to do phase 3 without doing those other phases because you're going to fail and you're going to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that that's great insight there, and I appreciate the detailed breakdown of a phased implementation approach. Stef, what are some practical steps marketers can take within those phases right now? Where should they begin?
I mean, it's really the sequencing is the most important part, right? And the learning as you go. And as Gary says, first, you want to identify these high impact, low effort opportunities, right? This is probably what people have been experimenting already with their personal conversational GPTs and stuff. So already demonstrating this is possible. But then when you go into the pilot phase, you already want to have like a basic adoption to these tools that you want to build, right? And you become more specific for this workflow. Let's say you have a social media campaign, right? And you want to have a pilot to start automating certain parts of that, right? So this is where you take the learnings that people have already made and you turn it into something where now you start iterating. Every day you start changing it a little bit, right? And you give it more information, you give it more media data, right? You give it you start with a small Excel to become very practical now of maybe 100 rows. And then when you know that the model is working and the outputs are consistent, you say, okay, now I give it a 10,000 row social media report from Sprinkler, right? In order to come back to and identify where are gaps in my communication, where should I shift my budget, just to give one of the many examples that we're working on. But once you have identified these really valuable cases and you got that momentum, this is the point where you really want to gather your team and really establish like a governance about it, right? because there's no value, as Gary says, there's no value in just trying to do everything at once. The sequencing is the most important part. And you will often find yourself that you took step 3 already or step 4 already, and you might still want to go back to step 2 and improve on it. And this is one of the big difference in working with AI. It is, as I said in the beginning, it's not just a software where you get an update every 3 months and then there's a new function. You're constantly reiterating it. You're constantly making it better, right? And you might constantly also run into the challenge of hopefully not breaking it, right? Because at some point you want to have that automation run fully through. So it is really investing into upskilling your change management into a continuous change management, and that takes governance and process. And I think Gary was hinting at that a little bit. At MedEngine, we have overcome the first 3-4 phases already, and we are already into that governance where we're now reviewing what we did in the first cohorts of implementation, and now review, okay, how can we make this better before we go into the next one?
Yeah, I can't probably state more profoundly how important it is to think about the sequencing and ensure that as you know where you want to go. How do I get there? What steps do I take? And are there logical steps? And I think strategically, it was invaluable. I can't put how important it was having the Vertesia team work with us, because they really helped us navigate and break that down into that effort and value and distinguish where those sequences were. And they were really able to help us navigate that. And we kind of broke down our projects. We started at cohort 1. We have up to cohort 7. We're working on cohort 2, and we have strategic lines of where we want to go. But each cohort is kind of building into the next cohort in terms of certain functionality within our model that we can leverage now at a higher scale. So at cohort 1, we did 2 pieces, A and B, but now in cohort 2, we're going to see needed A and B. And now we can start doing the C piece. And we're starting to see that. And it went back to what I said a little bit earlier, is that we are seeing an ROI at every step, yet we're still building into that big picture. And we're doing it kind of like, if you think of a skyscraper, we're doing it one floor at a time, just like you build a building is how you want to build AI. And think of it strategically, that you're putting each floor up and the structure's getting stronger as you get higher and higher, because you've built out the bottom and you built the foundation. And I think that's a critical piece that a lot of people are overlooking, is they're just jumping and saying, I want to get the big fish, but then they're just spending a lot of money to get there because they didn't realize they could have built a lot smaller fish that would build into that would have gotten them the end result. But in the immediate, they would still see some return on investment. And so I think that was really important for us, not only when we looked at effort and value, but to really then look at the sequencing of those efforts and values and see where there was a line of sight that said, this really builds into this, so let's start here and work our way there. And it's really helped us see immediate benefits from what we're doing with Vertesia and within the platform and within the whole MedEngine organization.
And I just want to add here, it's also the partnership that develops over time. When we see, okay, we have the new cohort to work on, it is a little bit like I get excited when I see the new use cases, right? And then building upon what we did so far and the learnings, because they are technical challenges, but they are also cultural and process challenges. And it's really fun to work with the guys at MedEngine. They're a great team.
I think it's important to have a really good vendor that, there are experienced experts out there. And I would say that Vertesia brought expertise into MedEngine to help us navigate AI. I'm not an expert. I tried to be. We did a ton of research, but really having that value of a real strong vendor that really understood data science, understood modeling, understood how we can leverage, Gemini versus ChatGPT versus Claude. When do we use them? Why do we use them? How do we use them? How much is it going to cost me when I'm hitting these LLMs? And having that ability to have an expert help us navigate that was so important. And it really helped us, again, see immediate return on investment because we really broke it down into small pieces and moved forward.
Love those insights. Thank you so much. Gary, earlier in our discussion, you had mentioned the ROI benefits your company received with AI. What guidance would you give our audience on how to discuss ROI with their stakeholders?
What we tried to do is we tried to monetize, the savings that you would get by implementing that AI piece. And a lot of times, like Stef said earlier, it's not about people reduction. It's really about how do I get more out of the staff that I have? And so for us, there were some intrinsic benefits in the sense that now that I have more data points revolving around each of my assets, I now can improve how that asset is utilized in our system. So we were able to bring natural language into core applications that only had the old metadata lookup by a certain data field, and that was the only way you could find data. Now we can find assets based on natural language and say, show me everything that's red polka dots or anything that is St. Patrick's Day, and we can get a breadth of assets. And so there's little nuances within your business workflow where you can start seeing value in terms of improved workflow, improved efficiencies, increased volume with the same set of employees. And then really for us, everything is about speed to market. How do I get something out to the market as quick as possible? We've definitely been cutting that timeline down and really improving how quickly we can get, new features out to our customers, and it drives sales for us ultimately. And that's kind of setting up those measuring points for each task. Where is the benefit coming from? How is it benefiting the business? And don't always get caught up in dollars and cents. It really can be just efficiencies, improvement, or how is it driving the business growth or efficiency?
Yeah, I think that's such a great note. ROI is not always financial, so thank you for bringing that out. I think that you've both given us a lot to think about, and I imagine that many viewers might be considering what's next within their own AI journey. Stef, if you were to provide a roadmap for marketers, what would you include? What's your recommended path forward?
Yeah, I think I would really start with that mind shift, that shift of paradigm from like a product and model centric to more strategic AI development. And what I mean by that is you should allow yourself to challenge the approach of buying siloed software, right? You need to understand that these vendor-specific roadmaps, and even now with all the AI vendors out there, this is their roadmap, right? So you need to advocate internally to become your own software development in a way, because this is what's defining your ability to move fast and adopt that at the pace that AI is now allowing you to do, right? To reinvent yourself. So it allows you for greater flexibility, better control, and alignment with your specific business needs when you do that. So get away from this vendor lock-in, and I've seen many organizations do that. They put all of their eggs into one basket, and there are only a few baskets. I'm not naming any brands here, right? But become agnostic. Become agnostic to the vendors, become agnostic to their solutions, and realize that all of this belongs to you. And AI is a commodity. It will become a commodity even more, just like electricity. At some point, you just plug it in and it will do as it does, and you can change what provider you want to have. Don't lock yourself into infrastructure contracts and into business consultancy. That is not really for you, right? Because these people are trying to sell you software. They're not trying to sell you your own innovation and the reinvention of your own company. The other thing is like focus on more holistic organization-wide AI approach, right? Develop an AI roadmap that really covers the entire organization and not just some isolated departments. And there might be interdependencies between different functions and how you design these AI solutions and optimizing your processes. But you really want to ensure that your investments contribute to the overarching business goals. And you do that really coming back to the sequencing. It's common thinking here, really, right? You need to prioritize on your data foundations and integrations. You have an existing ecosystem. Don't think just because there's something new and shiny out there, this is something that you need to do. You don't need to necessarily replace your dam because there's a new dam that now has an AI plugin. reconsider what you have, and then see how you can use AI strategically, implant it into your ecosystem, and how it suddenly upgrades all of your other systems. So, and you are the one in control of that central AI that can tap into all of your other components of your application ecosystem. So don't just go out and buy new stuff, and embrace it. Embrace this sort of new way of working, of iterative development. Many bigger organizations have always refrained from doing their own internal software development because it comes with a certain tax, right? It comes with a certain technological debt. But this is exactly what this is about. Don't just trust that the big providers out there will help you with refining your business. You are your very own smith of your very own fortune.
Yeah, I think if I'd add any color for us, it was really important, literally, that we locked ourselves in a room with all of the key stakeholders and said, where are our bottlenecks? Where are we having problems? What are some things that are very manual or very labor intensive? Are there opportunities where AI can work for us? And then we just started plotting those on that effort and value graph. And then it also boils down to, well, that's a great idea, but we have no input that could drive that AI decision. So scratch that one until we solve the problem. I think the other thing that we did that was very important is sometimes AI isn't the solution. Sometimes it's just a new, better workflow that you just need to fix that's broken, and it's not has anything to do with AI. So don't spend money throwing AI at a solution that's really just a workflow change that is just an operational improvement. And that really helped us kind of see the forest through the trees and realize that where is AI appropriate? Where is it not? Where are we just broke and we need to fix it? It doesn't really involve AI. And then once we plotted that into that effort and value, then we started to see those relationships, or the sequencing started to really come very apparent that, oh, wow, we need to do this before we can do that. And this is actually low effort, high value. Wow, let's get this done. And it kind of builds into it. So I think brainstorming, ask people, get them in a room, that typical, brainstorming, start writing things on the wall. Nothing's a bad idea. And then once you start to distill it, things are going to come very clear where there is an AI opportunity, where there's maybe just a workflow change, or whereas, you know what, we can't really deal with that because we have no input to even apply AI. But at least I know that now, and I didn't waste money trying to do something that's absolutely impossible because there's no input to support it. So that was really important for us.
That's a great note. Thank you both so much for sharing your insights and experiences. Before we move to some audience questions, I would love if you could each share your top takeaways for our viewers. So Gary, let's start with you.
I think for Mad Engine, it was really important for us to find a platform that was agnostic, that let us look at opportunities holistically across the board and not be constrained by, ChatGPT generally is very text-based. We're learning that Gemini or Nana Banana is very image-centric. Claude is very code-centric. Each of these LLMs or each of these tools are really kind of in niche areas where they're really getting strong. Well, the benefit of a platform like Vertesia is it lets me use all of those transparent to what I'm trying to do operationally. I can just utilize those agnostically, whether it's agents and whether it's models, they're available to me, and they're available to me to protect my IP, and they're there to protect my data control. And if I would give this advice to anybody, you have to know and understand where your IP is controlled and managed, and you need to know how you control data. You can't just use ChatGPT. If you throw stuff up there, it gets holistically sold to the world. Or if you don't have the private setting, it does. But if you have the private setting, I still don't have control as an organization of your data, and that's problematic with most data control policies. So understand the policies, understand the tools, understand how to use them responsibly to protect your IP and how to protect your data, but also look for platforms that are more holistic and more agnostic, that lets you not be constrained by the tool, but to use any of the tools that are out there so you can find the best fit for the problem you're trying to solve.
Great advice. Stef, what would be your top takeaways?
I mean, first and foremost, AI is strategic, right? It's not just a tool, and this is something you need to embrace. Really, it's in order to adopt successful AI, you need to have this strategic mindset of having a holistic approach, right? It's a core enabler to your business transformation. It's not just the GPT, right? It's really this agentic AI that will help you to unlock true automation. It's, again, not back to the drawing board and creating like a workflow chart and trying to lift and shift that over. And the first time something changes, because look at every workflow chart you have looked at. This is like an idealistic, non-realistic picture of how people work. Nobody works like that. The moment you put it on paper, it's wrong. And then and for years, we've been trying to do that with automation, following workflows stringently. Agentic AI helps you to get away from that by providing you an intelligent, autonomous workflow automation that makes decisions, but that keeps you in the loop before these decisions are being executed against. It's a really important factor. Then everything we talked about today, start small, think big, scale fast, right? These are the three things that really make you accelerate that. And just to be clear, always keep that broader strategic vision in mind, right? But that should not hinder you from making these small sprints in finding small things that can be very valuable. And ideally, don't, as to Gary's point, don't just do that in whatever platform people come and say like, hey, I want to do this on Gemini. I have this new subscription for $10 a month. We can do it with this. You expose your data to a lot of risk. It might not be working. Really, you should be looking for a platform that holistically protects you, that checks all the boxes, and that allows you to move fast. And then I think the final and most important point is, I don't think AI is there to replace humans. It is there to bring us into a more collaborative future than we ever had before. When I see how the ways of working within Vertesia itself have changed, right? How we're able to come together and talk about something, but then when we try to get to a solution, we're not starting at the beginning. We describe the solution where we want to get to and work our way backwards using the Vertesia platform itself. It's a shift of the paradigm of how we become the decision makers, rather than the people that have to do all the meticulous detail and think about all the little steps. Have the autonomous AI figure that out. And that really leads to a whole new way of collaboration within the team, which is very exciting. And it's really it's a very fostering culture for allowing people to work together. So I don't think we will necessarily see that advertising and marketing in general will see a decline in the number of people that are required. I would see they will be able to do a lot more with the same people that we have now.
Perfect. Well, thank you both. In the time that we have left, I do want to reserve that for some audience questions, as we've received quite a few. Remember that if we can't answer your question during this webinar, you will receive a response via email. So our first one here, I'd love to hear from both of you on these questions, but Stef, let's go ahead and start with you. When is it appropriate to seek outside help with AI rather than manage it internally?
So it comes back to what you want to achieve, right? So, and what your vision really is. If you're just playing around with stuff, then you don't need outside help. You can read magazines, you can be on Instagram feeds, you can subscribe to all the new models coming out and play with it, and maybe there will be bits and pieces in there for you, but that would be perfectly fine, right? The same is true when you already have existing infrastructure. Don't just go in and replace everything with AI-enabled infrastructure. I buy a new dam because it has AI now. I buy a new financial system because it has AI now, right? Bits and pieces get there. So when you are serious about doing it, you're gonna find your roadblocks rather quickly. From the moment where it's not just like the conversational agent that you're working with as a person, but the moment you want to scale this up and make your team work and collaborate together with an agentic platform. This is where you realize you need help, because developing all of this yourself And this is what the heavy lifting and shifting that Vertesia does for you. So you don't have to develop all these tools. You don't have to think about how to integrate with Microsoft and Salesforce and all of that stuff. Vertesia has figured all of that out as a platform. So you can just come in with an idea, drop what's on your mind. This is a problem I have. I'm looking for a solution like that. And you literally, I kid you not, you put it in like that. You explain the problem to the platform, and the platform will design a solution for you that's actually, it will be working within the first hour. Most use cases that we're working on, within 1 hour, we have a proof of concept.
You know, I was thinking, so I think probably in 10 years, you're going to have a company they're going to have an AI department, just like you have maybe a dev department or a marketing department, but that's in 10 years. Maybe it's in 5 years. But right now, companies don't have AI experts generally on their staff. I know we didn't. And I think for us, if you're going to do phase 0, which is nothing, you obviously don't need a consultant. If you use phase 1, you're not going to need a consultant. But if you start pushing into phase 2 and 3, I believe every organization is going to need some type of AI expert that can collaborate with them and help them navigate what's happening out in the marketplace right now. I can't imagine where I would be if it hadn't been with us, not only working with the Vertesia platform, but we didn't even mention this, but the experts that came with that platform in terms of understanding AI, its scope, how to build it, how to be sequenced, that was intangible. I can't put a value on how important what that was to us and our ability to achieve our goals rapidly and successfully and continuing down that road. So I think in this day and age, you're going to need a vendor that has some kind of AI savvy to support your business, because you don't have anybody in your business that's basically been set up that way yet. 5 years from now, that may be different. But today, I think you want a vendor or you maybe hire somebody specifically for it. And it's really hard to hire somebody when you don't know necessarily what you're looking for, right? So I think it's very critical for those phase 2, phase 3 operations. You want an expert to help you navigate that. And I think that's the way you'll get bang for your buck.
Great points, both of you. Thank you. Our next question, Gary, we'll have you kick this one off. What are your thoughts on AI replacing creative jobs?
You know, we have a lot of creatives, and I don't think that's the case. I think it's enhancing our creatives. I do think it potentially prevents you from hiring more people than you may have needed if you didn't go an AI route. But I think it's embellishing what our creatives do. And I think it's really helping them do things more quickly. I can generate more, product more quickly. And I can even provide more intuitive tools for them that I call inspiration. So I think it's enhancing and improving their jobs and their ability to be creative. I don't think it's restricting it at all. So I think it's a benefit. It's like any other tool that we've ever experienced in our lifetime, whether it was, the invention of the cell phone, the invention of a TV, the invention of the internet. All of those things can be bad and all of those things can be good. AI can be good when it's used properly. And I think you want your company to embrace it responsibly, but you also want to make sure you ensure your staff knows that this is going to help you. It's meant to improve your job and help you do your job better. And it's not something to deter or steal from you. So I think that's part of the problem, is it's being, seen as negative, but I think in the right light, it's positive, and it's really helping our creative teams be more effective, more quickly, and being able to build some cool tools, within and around the creative side of the business.
Stef, any thoughts to add?
Yeah, I think to Gary's point, it will be not replacing creative minds and creative people. I think it actually fosters and it inspires them, people who are using a new way of working, a new way of creating outputs faster and reiterate faster, but they are still in the director's seat. Many people start realizing that, in particular with the tools we've been building for and with MedEngine. Now we see people picking up on it, and we're getting really good feedback. So once you realize that this is another, and even though we said it's not a tool, but it's another tool, we realize it makes you better and it's not there to replace you.
I think the other thing I'd add too is, and I think we've noticed this across the board, I've noticed it in myself as I've started to use more and more AI, is one of the things is a learning point is how do I write good prompts? And how do I, because it's something naturally you have to learn that the better prompt you give the model, the better, generally the better results you're going to get, or it exposes where your model needs to be improved or influenced. And so I think that's the one thing is if you approach it and say, all right, it's going to be a little bit different because now I'm still creative, but part of my job instead of, doing a pretty picture is going to be to prompt, my model to say, help me do a pretty picture, but how do I word it correctly? So I think some prompt engineering, some training with prompting, with the Vertesia product, I love it. You can do your prompt like show me X, and then you can say improve my prompt, and it will actually embellish your prompt with things that generally AI would want to really get a better result. And so it's been a great tool to help us kind of learn how do we prompt the system and how do we develop our prompting skills. And as you do that more and more, you actually innately begin to prompt the system more eloquently, if you lack of a better term. And so our teams are learning to use that, and it's helping educate them to be better prompters, which gives them ultimately better results. And I think that's probably the biggest change is you're kind of doing your work a little bit differently, but you're still being creative. You're just learning new ways to do those creative jobs, if you will.
Great points. Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question, so we'll end on this. At my company, we have multiple stakeholders who are claiming ownership of AI. Any recommendations to solve the who's responsible question? Stef, what would you say?
Gee, yes. So everyone's an expert now, right? And of course, the people that claimed ownership of previous new initiatives, they will keep doing that. But maybe this time it's a little bit different. There's always this question of like who's responsible, but also who's accountable. There's a lot of security concerns that you need to take into account. We talked about governance, we talked about security, right? And then there's of course like what brings really the company forward, right? Versus like the shiny cases which run as a proof of concept on their personal GPT account, right? But it doesn't scale. It's not valuable to the companies because only they can do it, right? So it is really, I think it comes down to creating like a steering committee that needs to be a cross-functional team from across the organization with key stakeholders from all the different departments. So it should be marketing, IT, science, legal, whatever you got, right? Of course, the management and leadership should still set the strategic goal of where we want to go with this, right? But in the end, the people who do the work are the ones who will make the shift, right? And this is what it comes down to when it also, when you have to define clear responsibilities and roles within this team, right? There's nothing like everyone doing everything a little bit, right? Versus having a clear understanding who's responsible to making sure that the new tools get tested and vetted, who makes sure that the implementation strategy is right. So this is not an IT thing, but it's also not just a leadership thing. I think it touches on all different parts of the organization, and so should be the representation on such a steering committee.
I'll preface it that I am, head of technology and systems, so I'm probably going to take a different approach than some, but I think it's strategic that a company first establishes a policy in terms of how we're going to govern AI usage across the organization. And that is important that it instills both technical people, your IT department for governance, but it also involves your human resources and your legal team so that you can come up with a composite policy that's universal, addresses the needs of the organization, which is to really protect your intellectual property, any of your customers' intellectual property, and any of your data control so that you have control over what's being developed within the AI platforms. And I think that's strategic. And I think holistically, it has to be governed by those three departments based on a policy. And then there has to be a process in terms of how new AI opportunities and or tools are brought into the mix. There has to be discovery. There has to be analysis. Can we use this safely? Can we use it where we protect our IP? Can it be used where we maintain data governance? And I think that's critical for an organization to really have a policy in place before they start trying to do stuff, because we kind of did it a little bit backwards. It was getting very crazy, and it was like we needed to take a step back and say, well, how are we going to govern this? How are we going to ensure that we have integrity and we're using AI responsible to protect the company and to protect the individuals? And I think that's a strategic piece that people need to be thinking about if they haven't, because it's really going to help streamline your ability to address the needs. As the company has needs and as new opportunities come up, we now have a process that we go through to ensure that that can be used safely and responsibly. And then we can go through the approval process. Ultimately, any company with any technology or with anything that you're doing needs your corporate support at the executive level. So you have to have their buy-in and support, but you still also need kind of that governance policy to ensure it's done properly throughout the organization. And that would be my recommendation.
Having lived 30 years in corporate, having followed all the Sarbanes-Oxley and all the audits and all of that stuff, having done that as my bread and butter, you're totally right. The guardrails need to be set, but also you need not become locked in, and you need not be, especially in these times, you need to establish a framework that allows you to move faster than before, right? Many companies don't have that yet. They're still they're standing in their own way to a certain degree, right? Because these policies need to protect your IP, they need to protect your client's data. These are fundamental things that need to be established regardless whether you have AI or whether people are just using the internet from within a corporate computer, right? So this is a part of the important barriers that we all have to overcome. But in the end, it's about how, again, to the original point, like how do you bring the vision to life and how you get there iteratively, in making it something that's valuable to the organization.
Well, I think too, that was the advantage of, like, for us, for Vertesia, because it was agnostic. I wasn't constrained. I can really use any tools that I want, but it doesn't preclude a bunch of people from trying to come up with new ideas. And as they do, we kind of address those. We try to point them in the direction of, can we do this with the existing tools we have? Do we need to develop or put something in one of our cohorts that we didn't think of that now becomes opportunistic? Or is there really a benefit potentially to the business? I don't want to preclude that, but I want to make sure it goes through a proper governance to ensure that it's done properly and with integrity to protect the company. And it is very new. It is something that we're still, I would say, is evolving. I think you still have to start there because you need to be governed properly. And if that slows things down sometimes, it's better than the other case of, oops, we shouldn't have done that type of situation. So that's what we're trying to steer away from.
I feel like we could have a whole nother conversation just on that question alone, but that is all the time that we have for today. We hope that you found today's discussion helpful. A big thanks, of course, to Stef Born from Vertesia and Gary Gaffney from Mad Engine for their time and expertise, and of course to our audience for joining us. As a reminder, this webinar will be available on demand, and a link will be sent to you within the next 24 hours. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful day.